The future of a ceasefire and hostage deal between Israel and Gaza hangs in the balance this morning, with a vote on the agreement delayed and an Israeli minister saying he will quit if the deal is approved. Anti-truce demonstrators took to the streets of Jerusalem overnight as Tamworth Country labelled the ceasefire agreement a disaster.
The US remains confident the initial 6-week ceasefire will take effect from Sunday. Let's go straight to our Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran in Jerusalem and Washington Bureau Chief Jade McMillan. Matthew, we'll start with you. What is the hold-up?
Amelia, good morning. This is an internal row within Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government, which has delayed the approval process of this deal, which was reached by mediators in the Qatari capital, Doha, last night, local time. We have known for many weeks now, many months, that members of Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, particularly the far-right ministers, Itamar Ben-Gvir, who serves in the national security portfolio, and Bezalel Smotrich, who is the finance minister, they have both expressed concern about engaging in any sort of ceasefire with Hamas, describing it as a capitulation to the group and instead saying ongoing military offensives in Gaza need to continue. At various points, the pair have threatened to quit the government, and we have heard tonight from Itamar Ben-Gvir that he will do so. So will his party. They will quit the government if this deal is approved. That doesn't mean that Benjamin Netanyahu's government topples into minority, because obviously it's a different system here, but to use the more common Australian parlance, they will guarantee confidence and supply within the Israeli parliament, the Knesset. But it does make life a lot more uncomfortable for Benjamin Netanyahu navigating life as Prime Minister going forward. And that is why we have seen this deal. His office earlier today said that it was Hamas reneging on key components of this agreement, but it didn't take long for the Israeli media to start sensing that something else was happening, that these negotiations with Mr. Ben-Gvir and Mr. Smotrich were happening in the background and weren't coming to fruition, and that is why a vote of the Israeli cabinet has not happened. That vote could now happen tomorrow. It could not. It could maybe happen on Saturday night, because from Friday afternoon through most of Saturday, most of this country shuts down for the Shabbat, so Jewish observant religious period there where nothing is done in this country officially. So that could delay the start of this ceasefire beyond Sunday, if indeed that happens. There are a lot of unknown circumstances and situations here at the moment, and we will continue to monitor those throughout the coming hours as we get a firmer sense of how this deal could come into force. But even though there has been this delay, it does appear that there will be some progress. It's just a case of when and how painful that becomes for Benjamin Netanyahu. We must remember here that there are people's lives at stake, though. This ceasefire, this initial 6-week ceasefire, is looking at the release of 33 Israeli hostages. Among them, it's believed to be the son of Jonathan Dekerchen. He is the father of a hostage who was taken by Hamas on October 7, and he has been imagining the moment that his son walks back through the door ever since he was taken.
I've held on to one image since October 8th, that there will come a day that Sagi walks, I pray, on his own two legs, walks into some room or some hallway, and his 3 little girls now run and leap into his arms, and his wife embraces him after these very long 15 months. That's what I've been working for.
Now, that is an all too common story among the families and loved ones of hostages who are anxiously awaiting this deal coming into force. They will not believe it's really a reality until they see their loved ones return home. And of course, we also need to remember that there are many Palestinian lives at risk here as well. More than 46,500 have reportedly been killed during the course of this 15-month-long war, and Israeli airstrikes continue in the Gaza Strip as we go to air this morning in Australia. Many dozens killed in the latest round of strikes. That death toll only likely to rise until the ceasefire comes into force. Amelia.
Thanks, Matthew. And Jade, I'll move over to you now. What did the US State Secretary say about the deal?
Well, this is expected to have been Antony Blinken's final press conference as Secretary of State. It was interrupted early on by several journalists in the briefing room who were shouting criticisms of the way that the US has responded to the war in Gaza. One man was forcibly removed, picked up and carried out by security guards. Antony Blinken went on to discuss this ceasefire agreement. He really sought to downplay concerns about about the fragility of this deal. He insisted that he had been in regular contact with the negotiating teams on the US side and also in Qatar, which has served as a mediator.
Confident, and I fully expect that implementation will begin, as we said, on Sunday. Look, it's not exactly surprising that in a process and a negotiation that has been this challenging and this fraught, you may get a loose end. We're tying up that loose end as we speak. I've been on the phone in one way or another all morning with Brett McGurk, with our Qatari friends, and I'm very confident that this is moving forward, and we'll see the start of implementation of the agreement on Sunday.
Now, this is the latest in a series of farewell addresses that we've been hearing from the outgoing Biden administration. The president himself spoke to the nation last night, local time, from the Oval Office, as he tries to define his legacy in these final days. The president certainly hoping that a ceasefire deal in the Middle East would form part of that legacy, with Donald Trump set to be sworn in early next week.
Thanks, Jade, and thank you, Matthew Doran, as well.
In breaking news overnight back home, there's been another alleged anti-Semitic attack in New South Wales, this time in the suburb of Dover Heights, east of Sydney CBD. Reporter Sean Tarrant-Goodwin joins us now from the scene. Sean, what do we know at this point?
Well, Emma, behind me is what remains of the scene of another alleged anti-Semitic attack in Sydney's eastern suburbs. Police say they were called to this scene at just before 4 a.m. this morning after reports of a fire, and they found two cars alight on the street. One of those cars had an anti-Semitic slur spray painted onto the side of it, and the house behind that had a large amount of red paint splashed across the front. Those cars have recently just been removed, but police have been combing up and down this street to speak to residents to try to gather evidence on this. Meanwhile, the incidents received widespread condemnation from multiple levels and sides of government. The Premier, Chris Minns, issued a statement earlier this morning. He said he's been alerted to the anti-Semitic attack in Dover Heights overnight. This is a disgusting and dangerous act of violence and is the latest example of a rising level of anti-Semitic attacks in our community. He said civil society stands united in condemning this flagrant racism. We also heard from the state opposition leader a short while ago, Mark Speakman, who was here with the local member Kelly Sloan, and the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was speaking on ABC Radio on this earlier this morning. He said this is an outrage, another anti-Semitic attack that is against everything that we stand for. Also, people who've been coming to look at this incident are local members of the Jewish community. Dover Heights has quite a large Jewish community, as does large parts of the eastern suburbs of Sydney, where a lot of these recent incidents have been concentrated. We spoke to one man, Leonard, earlier, who came and expressed his shock and frustration.
And these people are cowards, in my opinion, to come at night at 4 o'clock in the morning. If they were that brave, why don't they show their faces? I'm absolutely appalled and shocked, and the force of the country must come down on these people, and they must be locked up.
Now, this is the latest in a string of similar incidents involving anti-Semitic and anti-Israel graffiti throughout Sydney's eastern suburbs and also through other Jewish venues throughout the city.
Yeah, incredibly concerning. Sean, thank you.
Now, for more on the latest stories, here's Tom.
Thank you very much, Amelia. Good morning to you. Victorian police are still searching for the people behind a botched arson attack that left an innocent woman dead in Melbourne's west yesterday morning. Police believe the offenders targeted the wrong address. Two people were captured on CCTV entering a home in Truganina before an explosion engulfed the three-storey townhouse. The pair drove off, and police say a 27-year-old woman who was house-sitting for her brother at the time called 000 but became trapped and died. A Queensland mother has been accused of poisoning her young daughter to document the journey of her sick child and to gain a following on social media. The 34-year-old woman is due to face court today. She's facing almost a dozen charges, including administering poison with intent to harm, as well as torture and fraud. The National Debt Helpline says there's been a surge in the number of people seeking financial assistance. In 2024, more than 169,000 people sought help from the Financial Counselling Service. Now, that's a 12% increase on the previous year. The Helpline says it's difficult for many Australians to get by in the cost of living crisis, but reaching out for help can make a vital difference. The peak body for Australian universities says the country's stellar reputation as a globally competitive education provider could be at risk if PhD enrolments continue to decline. There's a new report out from Universities Australia, and it's found domestic PhD enrolments slipped by 8% in the 5 years to 2023. The organisation says it's due to cost of living pressures, and it wants to see the minimum yearly stipend that candidates receive lifted to $36,000 per year. American filmmaker David Lynch has died at the age of 78. Lynch scored Best Director Oscar nominations for Blue Velvet, The Elephant Man and Mulholland Drive. He also co-created the TV series Twin Peaks. His family announced his death on social media, saying there's a big hole in the world. Now he's no longer with them.
Okay, let's take a quick look at global markets now, and our futures are pointing up, but the Dow has closed 0.16% lower. This is off the back of a pretty mixed set of earnings out of the US, out of some big companies there. Brent crude is down, but gold is on the way up.
Today marks the start of the Southern Hemisphere's largest country music festival, with tens of thousands of fans and artists descending on northeast New South Wales for Tamworth Country Music. Casey Chambers and Troy Cassadaly are among the stars on this year's lineup. People have been making the pilgrimage to the regional city since 1972, with more than 50,000 visitors hitting the town each year.